Hi, everyone. Um, Welcome. As Karen was saying, we are doing the US seminar today. And my name is Pedro. Pretty much, I tend to be first point of contact when reaching out to Gestacy for either program, as you can see. And the idea for today is pretty much discussing all the important topics for intended parents when they're considering surrogacy in the US. The idea is for us to answer the many questions that you have and why the US is pretty much one of the safest and the most legal secure countries for surrogacy, and pretty much how Gestacy will be able to guide you pretty through each step of the journey. Today, we're joined by Karen. It's actually the US program director, and she has extensive experience both in guiding intended parents and surrogates through this process, and she'll be able to share her insights with us and how we try to make this process run smoothly for our families and surrogates as much as possible. Very important, we'll be also reviewing the webinar, so we can later share it with intended parents, and you'll see it through our social media, web and everything. So, hi, Karen.
Thank you, Pedro. I'd just like also to say that Julie is our surrogate. So she has been our surrogate previously for her first journey, and now she's embarking on her second journey with us again. So she will also be sharing her insights, and if our audience or intended parents here have questions for her, she will be joining us with answering your questions at the end of the webinar. So thank you, Julie, for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Julie.
All right, so we can start. So as Pedro said, my name is Karen. I'm the director of Gestacy for the US program. And as Caroline asked, we've been a company doing surrogacy journeys for intended parents since 2017. So I think that all throughout the years that we've been in the business, we've averaged on around 80 intended parents sign up per year, and on average having, with the US program only, 35 births per year. So just to give you a little bit of context about that one.
Perfect. So yeah, if you like, we can kind of dive in with some questions that pretty much most intended parents are asking me when we're having our first meeting. But my first question to you, Karen, is what makes the surrogacy process in the US different than in other countries?
In the US, the surrogacy process is legal and also very highly regulated in some states. So you're rest assured that you have clear processes and protocols all throughout your journey. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that really sounds assuring, especially compared to other countries and situations. And then yeah, kind of going a bit deeper into that, like how would you say that legal framework can protect both intended parents and surrogates during the journey itself?
So that's very important because, when you talk to intended parents, especially international intended parents that don't have any idea about the legal framework in the US, is that what we explain to them is that there are states in the US that are green, meaning to say that they have established rules and regulations when it comes to a surrogacy process. And what we do as an agency is look for surrogates within those states and then connect them with intended parents. And once they are matched, and once the surrogate is medically cleared, we connect them with experienced and reputable ART attorneys or reproductive attorneys in the field within the state of the surrogate.
Perfect.
So that's the legal protection that intended parents can have when they go through the journey in the US.
Okay. Sounds good. And kind of switching from the legal into kind of the other main aspect that also intended parents tend to be worried when it comes to kind of medically safety. Uh, I mean, why would you also consider that the U.S. is taking as one of the safest countries for surrogacy?
So here in the U.S., we have, highly reputable fertility clinics with established protocols that, adhere to the ASRM guideline. So I think that, having very good clinics in the U.S. also gives a level of protection to the intended parents that when they are creating embryos or when they are transferring embryos to their surrogate is that they have the best quality care from the clinics that we work with.
Perfect. Then another question that I'm also posed all the time, and pretty much has to do kind of once, kind of moving forward in the journey, is just how to ensure that babies are legally recognized and intended parents are recognized as such from the very beginning.
Okay, so what we tell intended parents is that when they do their journey here in the US, there are two things that can happen. Every state is different with regards to the regulations that they've set for surrogacy journey. There are some states that offer a pre-birth order, so meaning to say, even before the the baby is born, there's already a documentation or filiation documents that are done when the surrogate is around 15 to 20 weeks pregnant. So when the surrogate delivers and the intended parents go to the hospital, they will be the ones in the birth certificate because there's already an order of filiation. In some other states, there is what we call a post-birth order. So meaning to say, the surrogates deliver. Once the surrogate has delivered, then we do all the paperwork for the lawyers do all the paperwork for the intended parents to be in the birth certificate, naming them as parents of the baby. So there are two ways to go about it.
Very important. It does does any route ultimately affect the process? In either case, intended parents are both obtaining they're either way obtaining parental rights.
So I think that we have to be clear with expectations when we have international intended parents. The What we always recommend is to have a surrogate in the pre-birth order states. So their stay in the U.S. is let's say up to 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maximum 4 weeks, as opposed to having or choosing a surrogate that is in a post-birth order state, because that would imply longer period of waiting time. But on average, I've seen that it's around 4 weeks for international intended parents. But also there are some states that, let's say, for example, Florida, it's a pre and post birth state. But even though that it's both, the intended parents are able to go home with their babies, I would say on average, 2 weeks after the baby is born.
Okay.
Yeah, so it depends. So if they choose a surrogate, I would suggest that intended parents talk to their agencies and see the timeline if everything moves forward fluidly with the surrogate, so they have an idea. And what we do as an agency is also connect intended parents with art attorneys in the state of where the surrogate of their chosen surrogate, so they're able to get a clear expectations of timeline. So because we're very concerned about the timelines that intended parents have, because they're working also in their home countries, and we would try not to have them for have a longer stay here in the US.
That is great to know. And now that we kind of go into timelines, just kind of queued up perfectly my next question, which is typically how long do you think an entire process will take in the US?
So in the US, once you sign with us as an agency, we're able to match you on average within 3 months. Luckily, for this past few months, we've been able to match intended parents within the last 2 months. So, I mean, that's a great sign. Um, from matching up until from matching, medical clearance, legal clearance, embryo transfer process with a surrogate until delivery, on average, would take around 18 months. 18 months. So, meaning to say, first embryo transfer success without any complications with the pregnancy and the delivery. So you're looking at 18 months.
Okay. That tends to be quite fast. Yeah, I mean, kind of moving forward to another, we've discussed a bit of matching times. Kind of following that would be the matching process, and how does Gestacy ensure that we have a right fit between parents and surrogate, and just the idea would be kind of what, in your opinion, makes a good match.
So I think that I would like to share my experience with Julie. So when Julie started, I was her coordinator within the agency. So Julie and I would have conversations with regards to what type of intended parents she's looking for, tell her about profiles available in our roster of intended parents, and just taking a look at what the values are between the intended parents and the surrogate. So let's say, for example, that intended parents wants to have close communication. So we ask the surrogate. So we have a potential intended parent. They're looking for a strong connection. So I asked Julie, would you be okay with matching with intended parents that would love to have communication? And of course, knowing the profile of Julie, she wrote in her profile that she would love to have communication with, intended parents. And I think, I don't know, Julie, if you'd like to provide some insights on how we matched you with your previous intended parent.
Sorry, just trying to figure out how to work the button. With the previous one, I think, I mean, I was pretty open to a lot of things, so it was kind of easy to get matched. I don't really remember too much of it. I know they wanted communications. They wanted kind of similar to what I was looking for, and it worked out.
Yeah, so basically we match based on the preferences of the surrogate and the intended parents. Like I said, communication wise, expectations in all throughout the journey. So let's say if the intended parents wants a support person that is near the surrogate, so we have to confirm with the surrogate, do you have a support person near you, how many minutes away, and all those things. And especially we also match intended parents and surrogate based on the values with regards to, it's very important to talk about early on when you're matched about termination. What if, of course, most intended parents have their embryos PGT tested, but this is a humane process, and there are always some things that can happen. So let's say the fetus did not develop well physically. Let's say the embryo is missing, the fetus is missing part of the brain, or is missing half a limb, or missing fingers or toes. What would be the decision of the intended parents? If the intended parents say that they would like to terminate, of course, we would have to clarify with a surrogate if in those cases, superficial anomalies, would they be open also to, letting the intended parents decide to terminate the pregnancy? So I think that those are the things that we look for when matching both intended parents and surrogate. And obviously they will have a match call, just like what we're doing right now, to clarify things that they would like to clarify between each other in their profiles.
Perfect. So well, pretty much I was just going to follow up on that. So then pretty much the basis for the alignment of expectation between intended parents and surrogates
Yes,
would be
that's very
that
important.
initial match call, right?
Yes. So you have to lay your cards out right during the match call. So the expectation of both parties are clear from the very beginning.
Perfect. And then let's say once you move forward on the journey, is there any sort of reassessment, readjustment that is being done? How does kind of posterior phases does the follow-up continues?
I'm sorry, what was that again? I missed the second part.
Yeah, no problem. So pretty much kind of how do as the journey develops, how do we maintain expectations aligned? What are the type of follow-ups between intended parents and surrogates?
Okay, so in our agency, the surrogate is represented by her own case manager. The intended parents are also represented by their own case manager. Now, the intended parents and the surrogate are connected once the legal contract is signed. Okay, so they develop a relationship. But before we do that, we have, a talk. The coordinators for the respective parties have this discussion with their case manager, say, hey, you're going to be in contact with your surrogate or your intended parents. These are some ground rules that you should consider so that everybody is aligned. So let's say we'll always let parties know that you should not talk anything financial. If there are financial concerns, you should always go to your case manager, and your case manager will present, your concerns within the team, and we will manage it with, either the surrogate or the intended parent. And if, sometimes there are misunderstandings that can happen, so that is where we step in as an agency to make sure that we are all aligned in the process with regards to expectations for every step of the journey. So let's say you are matched with a surrogate, so the case manager for the intended parents will say, congratulations on your match. These are the next steps. This is the possible timeline. So please expect an update during this date. The same with the surrogate. Her coordinator will let her know, congratulations on your match. We will now wait for we've sent your documents or your medical records to your clinic to see if you're pre-approved. And once you're pre-approved, you're going to be seen for your medical screening in the clinic where the intended parents are what do you call this, are with their fertility clinic.
Yep.
So we every step of the way we'll let them know what the process is, how it would look like for the timeline, and we go from there.
Okay, perfect. And then yeah, the other question that also intended parents are dealing with, especially when matching or as you introduce profiles, is kind of what medical or what um, medical criteria most surrogates meet, and what type of criteria are we introducing?
So we always are guided by the ASRM guideline. So meaning to say we accept candidates that are 21 to 41 years old, that have had at least one uncomplicated pregnancy and delivery, no more than 3 C-sections, and of course, lives in an environment that is stable. That she has also passed her psychological screening test, as well as the background check for her and any other family member that is 18 years old and above. So we always comply with ASRM guidelines with regards to accepting surrogates. And of course, this goes the same for intended parents. So we do require background checks and also the site clearance.
Perfect. It's definitely important to make sure that both parties are properly vetted before even kind of moving forward.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, then I mean, kind of moving into a next part, which was why should intended parents choose Gestacy for their U.S. journey? And pretty much kind of taking a step back from that question, also, what should intended parents be looking for, in your opinion, for in a surrogacy agency, and pretty much how we meet those needs?
Yes, I think that the most important thing that intended parents need to know is to have an agency that would answer all the questions straight. What happens with this? What happens if this happens? And can properly guide them all throughout the process. So also personally, I've experienced infertility myself. So I know what it means for intended parents to be on the crossroads deciding whether or not this is the route for me. I have empathy for that because I've been there before. So I know, how intended parents feel about, making this decision. But I think that when they interview agencies, is that they should be well informed about the costs of the journey. As we know, this is a very expensive process, and not everyone is able to have that money just laying around. So we're very conscious about that. So we present clear cost estimations for the whole journey. Also, I think that one of the things that intended parents must also see is that how well they feel with the information given to them, and if they ask questions, they're entertained. They're given clarity with regards to any doubts, and before moving forward or before signing, is that they really feel that they know what to expect within the process, because there's always up and down. Like I said, this is not a product that you get at the end of the day, but the human experience, and human experience, there's always going to be ups and downs.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agree with what you were mentioning. Also, yeah, I think at least in my case, also going through a surrogacy journey myself, I do appreciate the fact that in my case, doing my journey through Gestacy was just transparency. Of course, at the end of the day, you want to make sure that, as you mentioned, questions are entertained, they are answered, and pretty much anything that you might want to know is being addressed in a very clear way, without any kind of surprises going through the journey or things that are not addressed from the beginning.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I think when you set the expectations clearly beforehand, then you will understand, how the process will be throughout.
definitely. I mean, I do think that's the most important thing, and also definitely intended parents should be asking lots of questions to every agency. I feel like it. Ask as much as you wish. You're really not bothering us. We understand that, as Karen was mentioning, it is a really expensive process in itself. Lots of savings, lots of time is put into a journey like this, and it's very important for you to fully vet agency, and most important, out of all that betting process, just feel comfortable with whomever you choose to accompany you in this journey, for
Yeah,
both agency, clinic, lawyers, even at the matching state.
yeah, you couldn't have said it any much better than I did. I totally agree.
And then, yeah, I mean, kind of, kind of, well, we're already 30 minutes into. I was trying to think about any other questions, any other doubts that intended parents have, but I really cannot come up with any specifics. I'm not sure if we want to hear from any intended parent that is present.
Yeah.
Want to ask any other questions, any doubts about the process?
So if anybody here present in the webinar, please feel free to ask any questions if you have any. Caroline, is there any other question that you would like to ask?
Sure. I actually love that you touched on like termination of the baby in certain cases, which is like a very touchy subject. So, what would happen if there was an arm missing and the parent was like, "Oh, I prefer to try embryo number two." Like, how bad could things get? Like, if the surrogate says, "Oh, I would prefer not to terminate." Or if there's like a chromosomal issue, but it wouldn't mean death, like maybe Down syndrome.
So before the match, or actually during the match, you talk about it, So we asked baseline questions to the surrogate and the intended parents. So we asked questions like, let's say, we find out that the fetus has Down syndrome. So I asked the intended parents, what would be your decision with regards to the pregnancy? If the intended parents say, I would like to terminate the pregnancy, we now go to the surrogate. So what would be your, how would you feel about, terminating the pregnancy, as long as it's safe, of course. If the surrogate agrees for termination, it will always be under the care of the doctors, if it's possible. So if the surrogate says it's not my baby, the intended parents are free to decide on that matter. So that is agreed upon,
okay.
and that is put on the gestational service agreement contract.
Thanks. And how about the success rates? Like, do you guys track your success rates on first embryo, on first embryo transfer? Like, what approximately is that? Like, is it 50% or higher?
So it depends on every clinic, and it also depends on the quality of the embryos. So I think there's a website that can let you know the success rate of clinics. So that would be more of a question that should be answered by a clinic and not by an agency, since that is more of the medical side. So with regards to the agency, is that we have the surrogate. The surrogate is screened by your clinic. If she's able to move forward in carrying a healthy and successful embryo transfer and pregnancy and delivery.
Thanks.
So in our database, we work with different clinics with different success rates.
Thanks. I have seen that document actually where all the clinics post, and I think that's so great to have. Like, it's hard to find in other countries.
Yeah. So that's also another positive thing with having a US program, because all that information is online.
Yeah, indeed, exactly. For example, in the Mexico program, unfortunately, that is something that we cannot offer. Each clinic does have its own tracking, and they will be letting you know. But there's again not the transparency that you do have in the U.S.
Is your testing in the US and Mexico, does it include typically the N the NIPT test or the Harmony like NIIPT test, amniocentesis and chorionic villi sampling? Is that typical or not typical?
I would answer in the US program. Okay, so although the embryos usually are PGT tested, before they are transferred, we will always go by the recommendation of the OBGYN attending the surrogate. So if, even if the attending physician has all her medical records that the egg donor or the embryo was PGT tested and everything looked great, the physician seeing the surrogate can still order for the test that you've mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in the case of Mexico, um, it is it is not that common. I mean, it is offered, and if intended parents would like to, they can be tested. But it's true that generally speaking, as Karen said, doctors will ultimately decide, but it's not it's not that common for them to decide it. Generally, if it happens, it tends to be upon the intended parents' request.
Do we have any other question?
To the Yeah, definitely. We'll be sharing, as I mentioned, the 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 recording of the webinar. You'll have my email also, and all information, so that won't be a problem. If there any other question for today?
The intended parents can also ask Julie, our
Exactly.
surrogate, if they have any questions, about her journey, how it felt, the expectations. Please feel free.
I have a question for Julie. Did you like modify what you ate, or did you pretty much just eat your typical diet? Did the intending parents ever ask you to follow a diet, or how did that go?
On my first journey, there was nothing about my diet. My diet was okay with how it was. I did communicate a lot with the intended mother about like what I was eating and type stuff, because she'd ask questions about some of my meals and the ingredients in them, but there was really no agreement. With my second journey that we're starting now, there is they were asking me to maintain, a little bit of a healthier diet if I needed to, because I had got gestational diabetes on with my last journey. So they focused on that a little bit more with this one.
Thanks.
Does anybody have any other questions for Julie?
Okay.
All right. Okay. So I think that our webinar is over. If you guys have questions with the US program, please feel free to let me know. My email is karen@gestacy.com, or you can just, ask Pedro as well.
And yeah, well, nice for you to have joined us today. And yeah, as I said, we'll be sharing that recording. My email is pedro@gestacy.com. Any questions, any doubts, feel free to reach out as well.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie. You all have a great day.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks, Julie.